Hi, greetings, and greetings to everyone. This afternoon, I'm so delighted to be here, and I am so happy for all of the individuals who would have consented to be a part of today's program, Issues in Focus with Shibiki Vivals. So the first thing I want to ask those individuals who are viewing, you can send the link to your Facebook page so that other persons can actually they can see what we have in store for them today. One of the things is very important is that racism is a topic that is very, very, very dear to my heart. And I know at first when my friends would have asked me, I asked a few persons, what social issues can we look at? And I know a few individuals would have said to me, why not look at racism? But honestly, I did not know how to look at the topic, especially alone. But I'm so happy that I was able to have this particular program where we can have several persons here on the platform with me so that we can share with each others, right? So what I'm gonna do, we have Malika. She is on standby there waiting. So you will see at certain point in time, I'm gonna remove one person and then I'm gonna just add her. She can give her comment on the stream and then I'm just gonna add you back. Everyone clear and understand with that? So we are going to have an interactive time this afternoon here. All right, great. So before we go any further, let us just pray. Great God and eternal Father, we are thankful for each and every individual here before us this afternoon. I pray that you will be with all of our viewers in a special way. Father God, I know racism is a topic that many persons don't want to talk about. Some persons don't want to hear about it, but I pray that this afternoon persons will be relaxed and open about the matter. Help us that each and every one of us can work cooperatively to eradicate this problem. Through Jesus Christ we pray. Amen. All right, great. So we are going to get straight into it. Hi, Dexter. Welcome to you this afternoon. All right, so one of the things I want to ask you, we realize that, recognize that we have all the different races represented here. We have African, we have Latino in the person of Laura. We have Black, and I'm not Stephanie, I'm not seeing your race, but could you? All right, all right.
I'm white. I'm a European, yes.
All right, she's European. So in Guyana's context, we say European or we say white. And we have Andrea in the person of Amerindian. And we have Arusha and Ronald in the person of, well, Ronald told me he is South Asian plus Amerindian. Did I get that right? South Asian plus Amerindian, and Arusha is East Indian. Wow. So we have a wide range of persons. And of course, we have Moise who is African. And perhaps, as he said to me, that the French Antilles is difficult to find a pure race. So he is mixed with something else, but he himself may not quite know. So we have two couples on the program, and I am so happy that they're here because as a collaborative effort, we will be able to look at this issue of racism here this afternoon. All right, great. So remember, to our audience, remember you can leave your comments in the comment section. Feel free. We will certainly read your comments. We can, if there are questions that you have, our panelists will try their best to address it. Well, if they can't, each and every point we can pass on it if maybe it's a question that need more in-depth research and they're not quite certain about. All right, great. So the first question I'd like to throw out, and I just want maybe 2 responses from the panelists. When you think about the term racism, what is racism to you, or what would you define racism as? Any 2 individuals can answer me on this.
Okay, I'll go first. Good afternoon, everyone. I would say racism is discrimination against another person, or it's feeling superior over another person. One is feeling superior.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Andrea, for that response. Anybody else?
Yeah. It's something I had the occasion to talk about with some friends not that too long ago. And I don't really like the conventional definition. For me, it doesn't really portray the issue. And I remember one of my this teacher from France, and he was explaining that racism, well, you have first to not make a confusion between racism and prejudice or stereotype. But I really like the definition he gave, and it explains that racism is it's something that calls back to oppression or hierarchization of one race over another throughout history. And he was explaining that because, well, we'll come to that later, I guess.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Oh, and just for audience information, I must say, can you tell Moise and Stephanie, the Mondelice, can you tell us where exactly you're from?
So maybe because of my accent, but indeed I'm from a French island, so that will explain also my accent.
I'm from the United States. I'm from, grew up mostly in California, but we are living in France right now.
All right, great. So you see, I promise you that we have different persons from around the world here. And Laura, can you tell me where you're from and where you are at right now?
I'm from Colombia. And right now I'm in France.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Laura. I know Laura she knows several languages. So even though she's Spanish, there's several languages that she can speak. So I'm so happy to have you. Well, Dexter is he's Guyanese, but he currently resides in Trinidad here. A prospective graduate, law student graduate. So I'm happy to have you. And Arusha and Ronald, they're both prospective graduates also. They both completed just 1 month, I guess, to completion with their BA in theology. And Andrea Charles, she is her profession is a social worker, and currently she resides in the beautiful island of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All right, great. So we're going to get straight into it. There were some questions sent by individuals in which we are going to address this afternoon. I know, as we said, that racism is a topic that many individuals perhaps don't like to talk about, and people basically shy away from the topic. So here are some questions. The first question that I would like to ask us this afternoon is this: do you think that racism is an emotional issue? Do you think that racism is an emotional issue?
So,
yeah.
Sorry. So for me, I believe that emotions can definitely be.
All right. So I'm hearing Arusha and I'm hearing Stephanie. So I'm going to take one of you first, and then I'm going to take the other person. All right. Go ahead, Arusha.
Yes, I was saying that while emotions, racism has a bearing on our emotions, racism is not entirely an emotional issue. That's just one part of what racism is. So racism can cause people to feel different emotions, but it's more than emotions.
All right. I hear you. Thank you. Stephanie?
So yes, she put it in the perfect words, very similar to what I would have said. That yes, emotions are definitely involved, but it's not necessarily an emotional issue. There are many facets to racism. Of course, racism comes out, and you see, in hatred and in the acts that racism causes people to do, that racist people are doing with their emotions. But it's not just emotions. Yeah, not just an emotional issue.
Great. I want to take a response of one of our males here, and that's why we have equal males, almost equal males and females here. So males, let me hear one of you. What is do you think, because I know we women are emotional beings, so I just want to hear what you guys have to say, one of you guys have to say about the concept of racism. If it's an emotion or not.
Yeah, I don't think the issue of racism is an emotional one. Yes, I agree with Arusha and Stephanie that it has bearings on emotions. I mean, as individuals who experience racial discrimination sometimes on a day-to-day basis, we would respond emotionally. But I think the issue is more than emotions, and I like to add that the issue is a moral issue, not just a socio-political one, but also a moral issue.
Could you break that the concept of a moral issue down a bit for us?
Well, when we look at individuals, we must recognize that we are all equal. That's from the get-go. We are all equal, and from the start, if we look at someone and we discriminate against them and deem them as inferior than ourselves based on certain features or characters that they may have, for example, skin color, we are not just discriminating against them because of a social or a biological point of view, but also from a moral one. We need to ask ourselves, is that right? Am I right to, am I morally right to do that? Am I morally right to look at you and based on your skin color, say that you are inferior to me and I am superior to you? And I think that's how the moral question comes in. Is it morally right for me to discriminate against you because you look different from myself?
Wow. Thank you so much for that. And when I look at Genesis 1:27, when the Bible talk about, God created man in his image. I mean, one of the things that I don't get that people, especially from the Christian community, how can you possibly be a Christian and know that God created humanity, the human race, and yet say, we exhibit certain behaviors and everything, and some of us don't even see it as a moral issue. And that leads me to my next question, which says, I want to know from your point of view, do you think that racism is learned, or is it taught to us, especially to individuals who are racist in different extremes or different levels? I see Laura, you smiling there. You want to answer that one? Do you think it's learned or is it taught?
I believe it's not something you born with. It's not like you're naturally racist. I'm so sorry. My English is not good. Yeah, I don't believe you're born racist, because at least for me, my mom is black, my father is white, my best friend is black. I was dating a black guy, so it's like when you grew up in that kind of how do you say it?
Environment, surroundings.
Yeah, environment. Then you don't see the change in between one and another, because you see persons at what they are, persons, and that's it.
Thank you so much, Laura. What do you think about this, Andrea?
I believe it's taught. We aren't born with this, so I agree with Laura. Yes, we are taught it. Yeah, so that's my response.
All right, great. Thank you. Mondelice, whether it be Stephanie or Moise?
Yeah, I think for me it's both. It's something
Both learned and taught.
It's learned and taught. I mean obviously if you learn something it's because someone taught you. But it's mostly also about history and where you come from, and not being, I believe, exposed enough to a larger environment, to more diversities that you get to become, sadly, at least to learn to have this behavior being racist. It's both for me.
For me, fear. There's fear, there's ignorance, but a lot of this, is passed down. Like when you look at the southern states in the U.S. of all, the history, it doesn't just go away. It didn't just go away with Abraham Lincoln and the abolition of slavery. It didn't go away with the civil rights movement. It's passed down of generations of these former slave, like their grandparents were slave owners, their great grandparents were slave owners. So this mentality is taught, definitely, because it's passed down. And the children that are learning this, they don't fully understand as a child. You're just taught, but they endorse it because that's what they're taught. This is an inferior race. You are whatever the opposite of inferior is, superior. Yes. Yeah. You are, and it's very, and yeah, it's a system that you're fighting against because the whole system around you and your environment endorses that thought, so it becomes truth for you in that context. And yeah, they have to be untaught, be
taught over.
Be taught, yeah.
All right, thank you for your submission. I'm gonna take a response. Dexter, welcome back. We're dealing with we're asking the question, do you think racism is taught or it's learned? So we're gonna take a response from the Emmanuels, and I'm gonna hear your feedback on it.
Great, no problem.
Well, I definitely agree with Stephanie and Moise and Laura also. You're not born. Nobody is born to be racial. And it's definitely taught and learned, and based on where you are, in what environment you grow up, that would determine the amount of racial prejudice that you think and act towards others.
All right, thank you. Dexter?
Yes, I agree as well. It's something you learn, and it's something that you could understand yourself growing up, especially if you grew up. The world experiences it, but especially if you grew up in the Caribbean, where there's such mixed classes. When you're going into nursery or preschool, you literally do not see race unless somebody tells you about it. And so it's not a situation where you're born and then you have this racial perception in your mind. It doesn't happen that way. You're taught it, and sometimes you're not even taught it directly, but indirectly. For instance, some persons that indirectly drive fear into you about the other race just to scare you. And so there are many ways in which you learn it, but it is taught.
Wow. Thank you so much for all of your responses so far. And for us growing up, especially, I know most of my viewers, they're Guyanese, and for other persons who are listening from around the world at this point in time, I want you to know, when I look at racism, it's like, I don't know why. And when I reflect, that leads me to my next question, because when I reflect personally on my childhood days, like I cannot, like, for me, like, I couldn't fathom that there was I know that somebody looked different from me, right? But like the concept of racism and hating another person, like that never dawned on me. Because I know in nursery school, and some people say that you don't remember things from nursery school, but I certainly did. I have a whole lot of memories from nursery school. My best friend in nursery school, she was an East Indian girl, Kanisha Kadawa. And we used to share meals together. We used to do a whole lot of stuff. Teachers can't really separate us because in our minds, there is nothing like race. We just know that we are friends and we are just together and we're working together. Which leads me to my next question. What is your personal earliest recollection that another race existed? But even before you answer that question, for some reason, I don't know if for you, those of you who are on this platform here, are you seeing comments from the audience?
Yeah, I'm looking at some comments that they're making on Facebook.
Okay,
and,
because I am not. My comment, for some reason or the other, I'm not getting to click. I like to acknowledge my audience when you're joining us and all of that. But I see how best maybe I have to go on Facebook Live directly to see if the comments that are coming in. But I just want to say welcome to all of you who are viewing. Welcome to those individuals who are commenting. Perhaps, Ronald, if you see some interesting question, you can type it in the chat, in the private chat section, so I can just ask you guys as the time progress. So the question is, what is your earliest recollection that another race existed?
It's I really like this question, and it's, for me at least, very much connected to the previous one. How about it's learned and sometimes even unconsciously. I mean, living in an island where most of the people look like me, or there is very few people that really white. We do have, but
It's rare.
it's very rare. And I become at least to be aware of it when I moved in France.
Wow.
And even unconsciously, I realized that even myself, I will not say I've become racist, but for me, before racism, which prejudice can lead to racism in some ways. I realized that walking the street at night, I might be a threat. And I don't even know how I realized about that. I guess it's just by watching TVs, always on media, seeing a black man did that. It's so much,
It's taught.
Thought even unconsciously like that. Even myself, sometimes if I see a group of black people outside, and I became sad when I got aware of that. When I saw a group of black people, I will be more afraid, more threatened. I don't even know why. And most of the time when I talk to them, they seem very nice. And you realize that even unconsciously, you learn those things that get so much poisonous. And for example, if I see a group of white people, I will not be threatened. I will even feel like I will be the one that makes them be afraid. And it's where for me, this question is very much connected to the previous one. It's something that's learned, but people think that it's obvious. I mean, how to say, it's a very obvious learning process, but it's not. You don't even realize. And it's sad because you have so much ingrained it in yourself that for you it's very much difficult to detach yourself from those prejudices and those stereotypes and those thoughts that can be apparented to racism. So I guess when I move to another context where my race, if I can say that like that, was not predominant.
For me, I was born in Singapore, so I was born as a minority. I mean, Singapore was a very mixed. I'm mostly Asian, but it was a former British colony, so it was a very mix. And then I grew up. First, I went to kindergarten in Michigan at Andrews University. So it was I went to kindergarten there. It's the first real memories I have, and it was a very mixed because as the Adventist Theology University, it's a very mixed. Of all races, and it wasn't really something that I don't remember ever thinking oh, there's somebody that looks different. It was just natural. It didn't, because of how I remember when we lived in Thailand when I was in first grade. I remember knowing that I was the minority, but I wasn't. It didn't really affect me negatively. It was just the fact. Okay, I'm a minority. In Thailand, a white person in Thailand, but yeah, I mean, it's the difference of what environment you're in.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Stephanie. Laura?
So I believe, okay, I remember that when I was a child, my father used to like one team. Well, in Colombia, the football is like the most amazing game, right? And my father used to like one team, and my brother used to like another one. But when I was little, I would always go with the one my father wants because he had more. He was like, I was more influenced by him than by other people. So I believe that when I was a child, everything my parents say was like, well, if my parents said, it has to be like that. So if you have parents that somehow are trying to show you that people different as like different than you is going to be a bad influence in you, or hurt you, or do something bad because just they are not looking like you, then you're gonna believe it because they're the most important person in your life, right? And I agree with what they said. It definitely depends about what is around you, right? So in my case, I spent like I will spend the whole year in an environment that wasn't like there were not a lot of black people, right? But then my vacations were like full of black people because where my parents grew up, it's like these black people culture. So I was like very happy in both of them. So I never learned how to difference between color of their skin, right? But I do have a lot of friends that like uh, just like racism jokes,
Racist.
and they think that it's like, oh, so funny. But for me it's like, wait, what? It's like, that's so stupid because it's like, it's like melatonin, it's just what you have in your skin. It's nothing else. But
Yeah.
that's what I learned when I was a child. And then when I grew up and I realized that racism actually exists, I was like, what? Like, really? And now that we keep watching all these news, I'm like, this is insane because I never learned that, right? And it's sad because the Bible says to love one another, and that's an amendment that God gave us, right?
Yes.
So for me, it's not. I mean, it's not even about how you behave. He said, "Love one another." So he's not saying love one another if they're black, if they're black. Love one another if they're white or yellow, or no. He's just saying love one another.
Thank you for your submission, Laura. And Emmanuel's or Andrea Church, is every one of you want to go next?
For me, I can remember that the first time I became aware that there were different races was in nursery school when we learned about the 6 different ethnic groups in our country. And it was a very positive experience because we dressed like them for matrimony and we were exposed to their culture and food and music and all of those things. It was a very exciting time. But besides that, I can remember not too long after my childhood, one of my relatives was married to an Amerindian, and I can remember listening to conversations, and I heard like negative things being said about her because of her race, and I thought like this doesn't add up. I learned in school that everybody's different, but we have all of these nice things about us. Like, and I thought, why are these people saying stuff like this? Later on in primary school and so on, I attended a predominantly East Indian school, and there were like one or two African students, and I was conscious that they were a minority, but I saw that they were normal, just like everybody else. So when I was nearing the end of secondary school, I think that's when I was more exposed to full blown racism being taught to me, discussed with me, and I never agreed because that's not the world that I experienced.
Thank you.
Yeah, the same can be said to me too. I actually became aware of other people from my family. My family is a mixture of many different races. In addition to me being Arawak, I'm also of the South Asian descent. and I have family members who are also black. And interestingly enough, my I grew up in a village that was very mixed. Um, my childhood friends were of different races, even though I attended a primary school that was predominantly East Indian. The minorities that were there, they were my friends. Throughout school, I can recall all my friends, they're all black, they're all mixed, they're not, actually, most of my friends that I'm thinking about it, they were not East Indians, and that was strange. But what I find is that because of my upbringing, I grew up mixing with other people. I not only became aware of the racial discrimination they would face, I myself also faced some of them because of that. I was called, a traitor, a betrayal. I mixing with other people, become like them, and so on. So my awareness of racism and of other people actually started at a very young age.
Thank you. Dexter, what about you? What is your earliest reconnection of racism, of knowing that there was another race existed?
I think that was early primary school for me. I was in the first or second grade at that time, and we actually did 6 races. But before that, somebody mentioned something that to me, and it was, "Why you always living with that kind of people?" And I was like, "What kind of people?" And the person went on to explain, "No, there's no other kind of people." And we were small children. We were very small children. So even now it sticks with me because at that time, that person, we were friends then, we aren't friends now, but that person could tell me this in such a tender age. Not all kind of people, you can't trust them. And so that's where I actually learn about racism, but that persons look at different races differently. And it stuck with me.
Wow.
I think it stuck with me for the right reasons as well, that I do not want to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Dexter. Andrea, I don't think I got your response on this question here.
No, you didn't. All right. I grew up in a community. The name is Kukwani, right, in Guyana. And in Kukwani, it's dominated by Amerindian and African mostly. I'm not sure which one is the most, right? But African and Amerindian. So I grew up with them until at the age of 11, I went out in New Amsterdam, Barbies, to go to school, right? So while growing up from the age 0 to 11, I am mixing with the African, the Amerindian. We normal, we know each other, we mix in normal until I went out. Then I, realized that, oh, well, it has other people than Amerindian and African because I'm mixing with them most of the time. So when I go out there now to New Amsterdam, right, and then there's a thing that people like to call Amerindian, right? They like to call Amerindian buck, right? I would say plain here, they like to call Amerindian buck because they say, I don't know what reason, but they like to say buck because I guess they say that buck don't know anything and all of these remarks.
That's right.
When I go out there, these are the things that I would have, heard from other people coming and say that, oh, buck girl, buck girl, this buck girl come. She come out and, a whole lot of remarks concerning buck people and so on, which, then I realized, well, I have to face it now. I have to face it now. So that is when I realized that racism did existed.
Wow. Thank you so much, all of you, for your comments. There's a question that came in from someone that I really, that this message came privately, and I really want especially Andrea and the Mondelice to address it. In terms of you, both of you guys, I love interracial marriages. You will hear me saying that all the time, right? How did you guys cope as it relates to marrying someone of a different race? I mean, Andrea is married to, well, Pastor Charles is mixed, sort of, yeah. And well, especially in Stephanie's case, how did you guys cope? And then there's another question on marriage. I'm going to ask the persons who are married here. The Emmanuels can give their input on this. Yeah. So go ahead, Stephanie or Andrea. How did you guys cope with marrying with somebody of a different race? I see Moise is smiling heavily there.
We were saying let you go first, and Andrea was saying
that. To be honest, we never really got any issue or negative feedback about it, unless I was blind to see them. I don't know.
For me, all the things was in my mind. All the things that that people could have said, or I could possibly be thinking, or could issues that could it was all the things when we just started our relationship, when we it was it was sly, it wasn't will you be my girlfriend? We were really good friends, and it just we're okay, well, we're in a relationship now. But my mind was going through all these things that you hear, okay, well, our kids and people are gonna say things, and there's gonna be issues, and we just have to be prepared for things, because I think I just overthink things. So Moise was just very patient with me, and we really, I think I had to do a lot more learning for myself to understand, because even though when I was young, I grew up in more of a mixed culture, but from 10 to 18, I was in a very predominantly white and not very mixed place in Northern California, which people who think that traveling 2 hours is very far and haven't really experienced much of the world. So I'm thankful that in my young childhood I had that, but I think I was also affected by where my environment was there, and just knowing that it's it could be potential issues, and because I remember saying I love you, I love you a lot, but we have so many things against us. We have everything is different, And he said, well, the most important thing that we have in common is our faith in God, and that our having the similar faith background is more important.
Yeah. No, she said that maybe at the beginning I was blind, but I have been single and going around places single, and I do see the differences. It's sad. What I'm going to say might be sad, but I took the positive part of it, so I kind of got good with it. For example, just 3 examples. I know if I'm going to some places, I would prefer go with her. For example, when we were looking for an apartment, I told her I was awake, you are there. Unconsciously, I know I will have more chances. Just for that, for example, I remember, and I know that sometimes, I remember when we got pulled over by police in US, I was also glad she was there.
Wow.
It's sad, but
yeah.
I kind of cope with it in some ways that it's beneficial for me. That's the reality. I mean, it's real.
Real talk. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Mondelice. Andrea, what about you now?
For me, I believe that racism is all about self-value too, how you value yourself, and when I was much smaller, yes, it used to bother me, especially when people talk about bulk and so on. But since I've grown, I've become mature, and I've been better able to know how to deal with it, right? So when I met my husband, I know that, this is my choice. This is what I want. This is my choice. And nobody couldn't, come and tell me, well, don't marry him because he is black. Don't marry him because, he's dark or whatever. Right. I know to myself that this is what I wanted. And like I think was Stephanie, she mentioned about we had one thing, they had one thing in common, which that was to me too, one thing in common is that he being a Seventh-day Adventist, and that was the most important thing. So rather than looking at the race or whatever, being a Seventh-day Adventist was the most important thing for me. So, and if I should share a story though, I hope my mother-in-law doesn't beg, because last night I spoke to her, my mother-in-law, right? So my mother-in-law, she is East Indian, right? And my husband's father, he's African. So I was asking her, how did she, deal with this? Did she had any trouble while dating and so on when it comes to her family? And she did tell me some of the stuff. She said that for her, she was being treated like an outcast, right? She was being treated like an outcast because when people found out that she was dating my husband's father, they didn't like that. They would have preferred her to date an East Indian, apparently. But, so when I asked her, did it affect you in any way? Right? She said, no, because we were in love, we were in love. So it's like she totally blanked out everybody, and they know that the two of them, they had each other. If nobody was for them, they knew that they had each other to themselves. So I just wanted to share that point. I hope my mother-in-law doesn't vex with me. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. So, which your ending point? This question is open to anyone, whether it be Dexter, Laura, or anybody can answer me on this. So, someone asked me another question. If they choose to marry someone from the same race, would you consider that person a racist? Let's just say if they choose not to marry a person of let's say East Indian descent, but they go for somebody of their particular race, or they don't want to. Would you consider that person racist? Let me hear the comments, especially from the persons who haven't spoken as yet.
I don't think so. I don't think it would be wise or fair to say that because someone married another person of the same ethnicity, that classify them as being racist. Neither would I even say that classify them as being prejudiced against another, because when we make decisions concerning, for example, dating partners or a prospective spouse, we do a lot of filtering, or I would say I don't want to use the word discriminate because it has negative connotation, but we filter the individual. We decide, okay, I like your qualities, you better match mine, and so on. I think you understand what I mean. To say that someone married another person of the same ethnicity means that person is being a racist. You could also say that a person has a lot of other discriminatory or prejudicial tendencies as well, because why would you choose someone who is more of a particular personality than another person? We can begin there. So I think I don't think that's a fair assessment of an individual. I don't think it's even wise to say, oh, you marry East Indian, you gotta be racist. I don't see that logic.
Okay,
Well,
great.
I think that the question brings out a valid point. Lots of people struggle with who they should date or who they should marry, judging by race, because sometimes you wonder if you will be accepted by the family. You
Yeah.
wonder if you will fit in well, and if you're very conscious about racial issues, sometimes you might even feel guilt that, am I racial because I chose to be with somebody of the same ethnic group that I am a part of? And you need to be careful in those instances that you don't go to the other extreme and practice tokenism, where you just date somebody of the opposite race because they're another race and you don't want to seem racial. Date somebody because you love them for who they are, of course.
Thank you. All right, Dexter, you wanna answer this question here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Your microphone is muted now,
All
though.
right, great.
Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
You hear me now, right? Great. So I love the fact that the point that was just made, because I was going to touch on that. Some persons just marry out of their own race just so somewhat for us to see that they married outside of their race. It's basically an excuse for them. It's tokenism for them. They basically have an aim for doing it. So it's also unfair to say that if you marry your own race, then you're racist. You get attracted to people for different reasons, and it also comes through socialization. Who you socialize with on a daily basis, these are people you interact with all the time. And if you interact with persons of your own race within a group of different persons, and this is the person you're attracted to, it shouldn't be a case where you feel you shouldn't be with that person because you're of the same race and you run the risk of being seen as racist. That shouldn't be. That's not how it should be. So I do not think that you marrying somebody of the same race should make you seem racist.
All right, thank you. It reminds me of I know about a couple that married. One person is African, one person is East Indian, but yet still he's telling his daughter, don't marry an African man. But his son can marry anybody else. And in my mind, I'm trying to envision that. How is it that you married an African woman, but yet so you're telling your daughter not to marry an African man? Is he prejudicial? Is he racist? All of these questions are going through my mind because you're trying to indoctrinate that young girl at that, and she was very young at that point in time when he was trying to he was saying that to her. I have another instance whereby I was just like joking around and I was telling somebody, I got marry well, everybody know I always talk about interracial marriages. So I was telling a guy there, I said, you know what? I want to marry an East Indian guy, or I want to marry a Chinese. I just called another race, right? And he was like, and the man said to me, and mind you, he's an East Indian, right? And he said this to me. He said, Shibiki, save yourself some hurt. Don't go marry an East Indian. I said, why? And he went into the details because remember, he's East Indian too, right? He went into details to explain to me why he doesn't want me to endure it because of family, because of all of those things. And he said, you got to know at the end of the day, but I would advise you, don't even think about going through that, because he also would have faced a whole lot through his life. So, and that is how deep rooted this issue is when it comes to marriage. So I don't know if Laura or Andrea has anything else to add on this on the topic of if you marry somebody, if you're racist. But of course my response would be no to that. If you examine all the pros and cons of it, you will decide which one would be better. But of course, as Dexter rightly said, you get attracted to people for different reasons. So I don't think race should be the factor to affect you that much. All right, Laura, you have anything else? All right. Mm-hmm.
So when I look back to the people I've been with, I certainly know that it's definitely not because of race that I choose. It's because of certain stuff that I have grew up with, right? So I really do believe, I mean, there are people who doesn't have parents, but I really do believe that for a girl, we always look at stuff that your father has, right? well, that's me. I mean, if they will sing as my father sing, then I will get so happy and I will be like, oh yeah, I want to be with him. You know, it's like, so for me, it doesn't pass through that line at all. It's like what you grow up. It's like what you like from the day you are born until now, and the experiences you have lived, because throughout the life you learn more and more about people. But the thing is that human being has these ability to make groups of everything. It's not only the matter of if you're white or black, or no, it's like you always have to have a groups, or no, yeah, it's like in high school they're always the girls that, like, they have a lot of money and they believe that they are awesome and all that stuff. They're always a group of the shy ones. They're always a group of the, I don't know, singers, but there's always groups. And I believe that that's what right now is dividing us, because you are always creating groups out of what characteristics that they may have, but that doesn't make you different than him, because as he is shy, you can be shy at some point in your life, right? In some area of your life you can be shy, and why are you judging him for that? So no, I would never choose because of the race of the guy. No, I do want some stuff for him to have, like, I don't know, I would like him to be Christian. That's one important standard for me, but that doesn't come into that line of races, like white. No,
Yeah.
not really, not for me.
All right, great. Thank you very much. And so we're moving on. Do you think that your life would have been different had you born? I just want everybody to briefly respond to me on this. Do you think life would have been different for you if you would have been born another race? Seeing as we have all the races represented here, do you think that life would have been different for you had you been born another race? I see everybody's smiling on this one here, so I am happy and eager to hear the responses.
I definitely think, I mean, just briefly for me, I'm sure growing in the U.S., if I had been born a different race, I'm 100% sure my life would have been different. It's, I can say I have never experienced racism myself, but I know that if I had been born a different race in the U.S., especially, it would have been inevitable.
Real talk, Stephanie. Real talk. Let me hear some other responses on this.
I thought about this quite a lot, actually, up to last night. I don't think my life would have been that much different if I was, because of where I grew up and the schools I've went to and so on. I still think I would have been here had I been a different race. Well, growing up in the countryside in Guyana, there isn't much different. So I don't think I would have been to a different school, had different friends, because my friends are also different races. So I don't think I would have had different friends. I don't think I would have had a different mindset, so to speak.
Okay. Let me hear two other responses on this. I know it's a question that anybody would ponder on. Now you're imagining, okay, imagine me black, imagine me Indian, imagine me Chinese. I know now everybody is transitioning now, trying to imagine themselves being a different race. Moise, you have any response on that?
I guess it's true, for example, from a Caribbean perspective, if I try to imagine, I don't feel like there is much difference, but I guess I will leave that for you guys to decide. But for example, in France or in US, I know definitely that if I've been at some point in specific time and occasion white, things would have turned out differently. I remember specifically one day I was looking for an apartment. The first time I went to France to study psychology, before I even met my wife, I was looking for an apartment. Everything was great. We were already signing the paper. It was done. I just had to send a picture to put in my file because I went through an agency. So it was someone renting her house through an agency. And apparently this person also asked a picture. My file was already done. It was already set up, signed. And then I got a call after of the agency telling me, oh, finally, it's not going to happen and stuff. And I was like, why? I mean, when I know that the last thing I did was sending a picture of me, I was like, I mean, you're questioning yourself. And I'm sure that I would have been different, things would have turned differently. I don't get, now vexed about stuff. I mean, I'm grown, I have my self-confidence. I don't care, but I know for sure that in specific setting, I would have been different. Things would have been also different.
Wow. All right. Thank you for that, Moise. Anybody else want to comment on that?
Well, when I think about racism, I'm closing the group to just black and white, and you just mentioned Chinese people, and I was remembered that all of these coronavirus stuff now made me believe that at some point I was racist. I'm gonna explain why. One day I was just walking in the streets, and then I was this Chinese girl with the mask. Quarantine hasn't started. It was like, it was a lot of news about coronavirus, but that's it, right? And then when I got home, I told Stephanie about these ladies that are from China and all that stuff. And then I was like joking, like, oh, coronavirus, right? But that's actually something racist, and you don't realize it until you actually think about it, right? So I believe that if I would be born Chinese at this time of the of the earth living, I would be like mistreated just because I'm Chinese, not because I can be a Chinese living in France, right? And just because the way I look, I would be like, oh no, coronavirus, right? Like, oh no, go away from me. Like I did. Well, I didn't do it like that, but I think it, right? And then, I believe it wouldn't be much different. I mean, I have seen this Japanese guy that he's from Colombia, but his parents are Japanese, and then he was in Colombia, and then when he was like 6 years old, something like that, he went to Japan. Japan again. He went back, and then he was telling how he thought when he got to school, he thought that all the kids were going to be like so serious because they learn very fast. But then he got to the classroom and everyone was like messing around like in Colombia, and he was like, well, this is not as different as my country. But then when the teacher came into the room, everyone sat, and it was like a very quiet environment. And in Colombia, it's not like that, never. So he was making like these comparisons in between the two cultures, and how it's not about you're different of the skin or you're different of culture, but how you decide to go on in life, right? So in Colombia, you can do whatever you want at some point because the teacher is always like telling you what to do, but there's always very disobedient people, and they don't care, right? But in Japan, he was telling that they were like very firm, like in that stuff. So it's not that like they don't have fun, they all the time are studying, and that's how they learn how to make watches and all that stuff that we hear from that part of the world. Is just that they set their mind differently. So it doesn't depend on the color of your skin. Again, it depends on where you grew up, how do you grow up, who or what is around you. That's what it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. All right, so the question under consideration, Ranal and Arusha, I don't know why I'm getting the feedback, but I just want to know if you were born of, do you think things would have been different for you if you would have been born a different race? And Andrea, also you yet to answer this question.
For me, that question is definitely yes. Life would have been different for me. It can't be possible because every race or ethnic group has a different culture and things associated with them. Your life obviously would be different. I value family and food and all those simple things in life. And I think if I was of another race, the way or the things that I enjoy in terms of family and food would have been different. My way of dressing would be different. For example, if I was African, I would have a different hair type. I would have a different way to treat my hair. I would have different options for hairstyles and dressing. I would belong to a different support group and all of those things.
All right, great. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, so we're going to move on. So what we're going to do for the next few questions is, okay, I'm kindly asking everyone to mute their microphones. I hope, okay, great. It solved the problem. So what I'm going to do for the next few questions that we have remaining, I'm going to ask just two persons to respond on them because we want to see how many questions we can address, because these were questions asked by individuals and we really want to see how we can get to them. So the next question is, what race do you think experienced the most racial tension and why do you think so? Which race do you think endured the most racial tension and why do you think so? So I'm going to take two responses for this question. And the other questions, two other persons can think about is, do you think as individuals we should not discuss racism? Do you think as individuals we should not discuss racism? Great. So those two questions are under consideration. The first one, which race do you think endured the most racial tension and why do you think so? And the other question, do you think as individuals we should not should we discuss racism as individuals? So let's go.
I think I'd like to take a shot at the first one. We need to be honest with ourselves, and my honest observation is the people of African descent are the ones who are experiencing racism the most around the world. And I think it has a lot of factors, a lot of issues, a lot of reasons why people want to justify them having racist attitude towards Africans. But it also started, I think it started with enslavement and so on. Especially in Guyana, I can attest personally, I've experienced this, even though I'm not someone of African descent. I have friends who are. My prior workplace, I observed myself, someone being mistreated in a very bad way because they were looking different. They were someone of African descent. And I thought to myself, this is wrong. Just to give you a little insight on what the situation was. A young man, he was just selling on the road. He claimed that he was making money to go to school, which we can all attest to that does happen in Guyana.
Yeah.
But because this guy was selling something on the road, the head teacher of that school, he stopped him from selling the stuff to the students who were on the road getting their transport to go home. He
And
stopped
what race
them.
was the
Stopped
head
him.
teacher?
Pardon?
What race was the head teacher?
He was East Indian.
Okay.
Yeah, he stopped him and he told him, "You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be selling anything here," and all of that. And he looked at me as I was a teacher helping the students to get into the bus. He looked at me and said, "Help me out. I'm just trying to make a living." And it just broke my heart to see that this guy, young man, being mistreated in front of everyone. And it was only because he is African. You know why? It's because that there were others who were selling too, and they were of other ethnicities.
Wow.
I would touch this. Well, all right, I'll let you go ahead and I'll come after.
All right. I wish you go ahead and maybe take Dexter.
Okay. I would agree with Ronald and say that globally, on a global scale, that Africans are the most racially discriminated against people group. But with that in mind, we also need to be aware that based on geographical location and ethnic makeup of different regions, other races can be in that particular region more discriminated against. But when you look at the news and so on, you can see that on almost every continent, Africans are receiving racism.
Thank you. Yeah, Dexter.
Yeah, I also agree. On a global scale, Africans are the ones that face the most racism, and it comes from history. And the way the system was created, it's systematic, and the way it was created for Africans to feel inferior, then you would not rise up against your superiors. And so persons that came after you also were your superiors, because you were seen stronger, but too strong for you to be able to rise up. So we needed to make you inferior. And so different countries around the world, you get the same treatment. And even in schools, you would see it. Africans, just by the way they look, they will be treated differently. For instance, I have seen where a car will be pulled over, and different races are dressed the same way, but the African will be pulled up because he looks like a thug. To them, he looks like a thug. All right? In schools, other person would have high hair, but because their hair aren't like as wool like Africans, it wouldn't be as high like an afro. So teachers would tell them, "Listen, you got to cut your hair." The other person's hair, it will lay down basically on their head. They don't have a problem with that. But for Africans, it doesn't look pleasant. So there are a lot of things that trigger into it. There's a lot of things that you factor into. But on a large scale, Africans face the most racism just by being of that descent.
All right. I noticed Moi's microphone is on, so definitely I know they want to speak on this topic. Go right ahead.
So I will be quick, don't worry. But I want to complete what Ronald and also Dexter said. And also what Awusha said. Indeed, you have also in US, Mexican are being also subject of racism. And also, the country like Muslim, people from the Middle East in Europe are. Yeah. But the thing is, even within those community, the darker you look, like in India, the darker you will look, the more, the more lower class you will be and the more subject to racism you will be. That's why for me it's definitely, at least African descent. The more you will look like darker, the less you will be victim of those things. And I will agree also with what Dexter had. It's come to history. I want to remind us that a lot of people in social media will say, well, you were not the first one enslaved and so forth. There were also the first white were enslaved also in Africa and so forth. The issue is that it's true, but it was the first time that worldwide it was legal to enslave Black people. It did happen in the past with white people enslaved in Africa, but what is ingrained in, if I may say, humanity is that because what happened and how much legal it was, there were even a way to do it. They had like books to tell you how to enslave properly and break their mind. It was legal everywhere, and everyone knew about it. And because it happened so, it stays on the mind and on history and on culture that people, even without realizing, are more, the darker you will look, the tougher it will be for you.
Thank you. And that is why I think it's time, and for all those who are listening, I just want to put a note here, being from the African descent, is that I think it's time for us Africans to recognize our worth too, where we came from and where we are currently. I hate to hear people saying that, oh, because of the slavery mentality, that's why I am here. I have not changed, or I cannot change. Don't tell yourself that you can move from one point to another. And that is why when during the era of time when it came where Black women started going back natural hair, I was so extremely proud of it, because all of a sudden now we would have moved from, as my uncle would always say to me, the whites created straightener for you Blacks to make you look like white. So you want to look like white, so you're going to straighten your hair. So when this new revolutionary effect came, whereby Blacks all of a sudden they're proud of their hair, they're proud of their kinkiness, I felt really, really proud as an African, because why we're standing up. And even with the late George Floyd story and everything that has swarmed social media, one of the things when I was about to select individuals here, it's hard to tell if somebody's racial or not. Somebody can mix with you and they still have racism in their heart, right? So one of the things I did, I checked, even though that is not 100% justifiable, but I checked individuals' Facebook pages. And most of the persons, not all of Stephanie, but I knew Stephanie from long. More of a Stephanie married a Black guy, so I knew her from long. But in terms of, for me, when it came to the other selection process, not to say Ronald and Arisha, I don't know you guys. I know you guys. But I knew those who were strong to speak about the subject because of their Facebook pages. And there was somebody else from Canada. I wanted to come on the program, but because of our time span, she couldn't be here. But when I checked her Facebook profile, I mean, yes, I knew when I was in Canada, she invited me. She would have given us food and everything. But she was so what I want to use this afternoon. Anyway, when it comes to Joyce Freud's story, she was on par. The updates were on our page. By the time you miss it, and I'm like, wow. So right away, I messaged her, because why? I didn't want anybody to come on the program feeling uncomfortable discussing racism. So that is why it actually guided my selection process of who comfortable to talk about this issue. And not because somebody, by the way, I just want to make a disclaimer, not because somebody did not have that on their Facebook profile page means that they're racist or anything. Let me make that disclaimer. But at least it helped me to recognize that these are the people that I can actually bring on the program who will be very open up about racism. And of course, I looked at those who are married to another race, and hence my selection process. So for our Blacks out there, well, Africans, I know some people feel offended when people call them Black, but I'm a strong Black woman. I don't take offense with that, right? So, but everybody is different. Like Guyana's context, if somebody said it's coolie man or coolie boy, coolie girl, I know some Indians will feel will be offended about that. But for me personally, I don't feel offended if somebody call me a Black girl. But then again, it depends on the context, because Andrea would have alluded to it before. Because while we say Black people, we say coolie people, we say Buck people, the way in which it is said and the message, the stigma that is attached, it most times is negative connotations, right? So let us be wise and let us use wisdom and be keen and observe people. What we call them by their correct names. And that's why, Stephanie, I know sometimes when we're talking about white people, we say white people. So that's why I asked you, what race are you? Because I didn't want to come on the program and say, oh, white girl, the white person's here. I wanted to know if you wanted me to, if you preferred me to call you a Caucasian person or whatever the case might be. So I am happy that you clear that one up and you're comfortable being addressed that.
Yeah.
All right, my other question is this. Do you think as individuals we should discuss racism? And I'm going to take 2 comments on this. If you feel as if after the 2 comments would have finished and you feel as if, no, I have a stronger point to make, but I need to speak, you can do so. I'm going to give you the freedom to speak. So do you think as individuals we should discuss racism? Andrea, I haven't heard your voice in a while.
For me, I would say yes, we should discuss it, because the thing is that some people may be going through something, struggling with being racist, and maybe when you discuss it, especially in a positive way, you can probably help that person. So we need to help each other. So for me, I think that yes, we should, because we can help other people in doing so.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Stephanie. You just before that, Stephanie.
Sorry, very quickly. No, I just think yes, and I just wanted to say, for personally, I'm, as Maurice can attest, I don't like to I don't like conflict. I try to avoid anything that has to do with conflict. But I've realized, very recently in all this that's going on, that being silent is not okay. There's a better word. Anyway, being silent is not an option anymore. Like it never should have been an option. This needs to be built up enough that something gets done, that a change needs to happen. And I saw something that in South Africa, when apartheid ended, they said that it built up so much. There was so much protest, so much unrest that enough people got on board and made enough fuss that it just had to break down. Apartheid. It's not a thing that was like so easy that everybody was just peacefully protesting, or just a few people were saying, okay, this needs to end. It was a huge thing that everybody got around. So more people, we have to get involved, even if it makes us uncomfortable. Racism is definitely something that needs to be talked about.
Thank you. Dexter.
Yeah, I also believe that it's something that we should speak about. For the fact that we all agree that it's something that you learn. Racism is taught. And if you don't talk about it, they wouldn't know that it is wrong. Because some persons learn from home. They learn from within the home that you can't be with somebody of that race, or you can't have friends from that race. We need to talk about it so other persons will be aware, especially youths. They need to be aware that what you're doing is wrong. And so if we continue like this, or continue down this path, we will get to a point that someday, and I believe someday we will get to the point where it's something like theft, where you learn that if you steal, that is wrong. It's wrong to steal. It's wrong to kill. It's wrong to hate. So it's wrong to hate somebody just because of their race. And so if you could talk about it more often, you're teaching persons and you're undoing what history has done. You're basically teaching the new generations coming up, because it's harder to bend the older generations, but the ones coming up are more understanding and they're more open to learning these things. And so the more we talk about it, the more they understand, and the more they get over like, all right, this hurts people, and this is not right. I probably got this from my family, but I will not continue down this path. So my children will not learn the same thing.
Excellent. All right, great. Thank you. All right, so we need to move on. Oh, but I don't know how many of you saw that video from Houston the other day. I think it's Houston or New York, one of the places whereby we had where the whites came together and they were actually they bowed before the African community asking for forgiveness, right? And they begged in terms of living, they just wanted both communities to live in peace, to live in love, and live in unity and everything. When I saw that, I think my skin literally grew, right? Because I'm like, what? But I recognized it was a Christian community that did that. The whites, they were Christians, right? And they recognized here, well, we don't want this thing to continue. Let us just end it. I don't know if bowing was the best thing to do, but the point of the matter is I saw a lot of Africans, they cried because nobody expected that they would have gone to the extreme, because everybody wants this to finish. Because even with George Floyd's story right now, it has created a revolution around the entire world. So we find that different countries just doing protests. Even the Seventh-day Adventist churches right now have actually started, peaceful protests just to see, we need this matter to, we need this topic to end. We want it to end. We want it to finish now. And I'm happy with the approach, and indeed we should discuss about it. But I think, I don't know if people are offended about the topic or things like that, because even there were some individuals who I would have been very happy to come on the program too, but then some persons are like, no, they wouldn't want to discuss on racism, give me another topic to talk about, but not racism. And I must take this opportunity of really and truly applauding you guys for accepting this the opportunity of being here, because I recognize that everybody cannot vocalize it, and everybody don't feel comfortable about addressing the issue. So there were some other questions sent to us. We'll wrap up in about 15 minutes or so. Let me see which one of them we should be discussing at this point in time. All right. So a question came in this morning also. Okay, let me get this right. There's so many questions that came in. I know we can't look at all of them today. This question here, at what point do you think racism should be reported to the police? Or do you even think we should report racism to the police? Let me hear what you guys have to say about that question. When I saw the question, I'm like, interesting one. Yeah, do you think we should report racism to the police? Just forget about George Floyd's story at this point in time, that the police was a person responsible, or most of the times because of police brutalities that are causing this entire racial tension to storm out of proportion, right? Let's just take it in our local context. Do you think that racism should be reported to the police? And at what point, if it should be? Mr. Lawyer, I know your microphone
Racism comes in.
I know this question
it comes in different forms. Yes, of course. Because racism comes in different forms. Racism is just about an attack. It's not just physical. It's not just verbal. Some persons are racist by just the way they treat you. So you can't report all of that to the police, which is why you have certain institutions like the Ethnic Relations Commission, that their job is to look into things like this. All right, these are policy issues, and these are things that the police can't touch. For example, if it's something that is not against the law, and you go report it to the police and the police arrest the person, you could be sued. You could see a false imprisonment charge or something like that coming against you, or some others charge coming against you in civil court. So you really have to be careful as well when it comes to things like that. And it comes down to policies as well, and how your country, your various countries deal with it. So you have to now know, all right, is the verbal abuse illegal? And yeah, in most countries it comes under assault. Physical attacks, yes, that's assault as well, or battery. But other things like just the way they treat you in school or something of the sort, that is not a police issue. That is for something equivalent to an Ethnic Relations Commission. And so you have to know who you report certain issues to. Because sometimes you try reporting it to your principal, but they really don't care because they don't see it as an issue. But you have a body built for this in your country that deals with these issues.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. Good. I'm going to take maybe 2 more responses on this very briefly. Okay, go, Laura.
I completely agree with Dexter. Definitely. But I do agree that you have to know what to report to the police. But as for me, I would say
all right,
something like big that you should report to the police. But to let people know, you know, like you always have your phone with you, so why don't you make a video? Videos are like amazing to get people to think about what they're doing and how bad it is, right? And yeah, I would definitely try to do something else, because the problem now is that, yeah, people believe that if I don't see it, then it's not real, but it's not like that, you know. It's like it's like right now it's a boom, like, oh, racism, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that happened, but it has been there all this time. It's just that at some point in history, people actually reveal the subject and came out and was like angry, and were like very upset about the issue, and came out, and you know, and yeah, and make a point, and then yeah, they take like they take some stuff, they did some stuff about it, and then they hide it completely. And then now that a video shows up, it's like, oh wow, oh, I cannot believe this is happening. But it's happening, and it has been happening all this time. Because why in the world should a black family be teaching their child that it's supposed to learn how to read and how to sing and how to be happy, that every time they see they get stopped by a policeman, they have to do this? What? Why? Just because of the way your skin looks? That's so messed up. And this has been happening all this time long. I mean, it's not something that just happened. So I believe, maybe getting out a little bit of your question, I would definitely agree with Dexter. You should tell the police what the police needs to deal with, right? Even if they don't deal with that. But you should definitely try to do your best to expose what's happening, either making a video yourself of yourself telling what happened because you couldn't film the exactly moment, or doing something, you know. Just people words have power. It's just that everyone is so afraid to talk, and it's supposed to be a free world, right? So why not to talk?
All right, great. Thank you very much, Laura.
You can.
But I'll take one more comment on this. But before that, I want you to think about this. I know you mentioned about us persons going to the police, and if persons you could maybe make a video. I heard mention a video or recording. But in terms of in the law, looking at it from a lawyer's perspective, do you think that somebody could incriminate themselves by recording something, recording an event, or recording maybe a conversation about someone without them knowing, and taking it to the law, to a police station or something? Can they face any charge for that? As you ponder on that question, I'm going to take a response from anybody else on the question.
I might throw hot water on the table, but when you do see, I mean, because people won't believe that there is institutionalized racism. Is that the word? Institutionalized racism. Institutionalized racism. You have seen that people have been reported. Like, I remember in France, a whole WhatsApp group of policemen was leaked out, where you saw policemen talking about how they're going out and, you know, just beat up some Middle East people or black people, and it's not doing much. You see that within the legal system. Just let's talk about the guy who was jogging and was killed by two guys who thought he was, you know, robbing a house. If it was not for the outside of the system, I mean the justice system, if it was not because of people's voice through media, those two guys will walk free right now, because the judge has said, oh, it was, you know, just self-defense mistake. If people was not voicing outside of the so-called justice system, those two guys would have walked free. So in some country, I'm wondering I'm wondering if it's that much efficient when you do see that there is evidence enough that even being reported, nothing is being done. If it's not people, being upset outside and voicing that they feel, okay, well, sadly, we have to take something now. If it was not voicing outside, even within the police system, the juridic system, a lot of just, get slip away. Oh, let's slip away that. So I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. Okay. I don't feel it will change much in some country, sadly.
All right, Dexter.
Yeah. So there are multiple parts to the question, actually, because you could face, suppose you're wrong in what you're saying, and there is no evidence against a person, then you could face malicious prosecution, a suit for malicious prosecution, basically saying that you lied to the police, they arrested you, they arrested that person, and now that person faced some kind of loss. There's also defamation, because you could damage a person's character, they could get fired, they could be seen differently, the business could suffer, and so on. So you have to think about that. But when it comes to recording somebody, different countries have different laws. For us in Guyana, we could actually use a phone call. Once you're on that call. So if somebody calls you, you could record your call and you could give that to the police. You could make a video. There's no law against making a video because it's computer produced evidence. Because your phone is a computer, your camera is a computer, you're also in computer under the law. So it's computer generated evidence, and some Caribbean countries accept it. Some states in the US accept it. Don't think some do. So it's nothing against you doing it, but for phone calls, you need to be at least one of the persons on the call.
Interesting. You see, and that's why it was important for me to have a lawyer here this afternoon, because I did not want us to do this topic without knowing the facts, especially as it relates to the law and what surrounds it. So the other question that is theological in nature, anybody can attempt it, but especially the pastors who are here. I know Moise says you would have walked that road too. But so the question is this: how is the image of God, the theology, helpful to the discussion on racism, and when did racism begin in the biblical narrative? I think that's very important for us to go on the biblical light in on this subject too. How is the image of God theology helpful to the discussion on racism, and when did racism begin in the biblical narrative?
I think it is helpful in that we see all human beings, every one of us, of different color. We see ourselves as unique people, made in the image of God. God did not make one group of people on earth in his image and another out of his image. We're all created in the image of God, and I think that theology helps us to see each other as being equal. And I'm not sure if this was raised before, but it also helps us to realize that we should not be colorblind. We should look at people, see that they're different, acknowledge that they're different, and respect that difference. We tend to have what I would like to call herd mentality. If you're not a member of this group, you do not belong here, and we are superior to you if you're not a member. And I think if we have that mindset, we are, as Christians, we are damaging not just ourselves, but also the faith which we hold to. And I think the image of God theology tells us point blank, look, you must love and respect someone even if they are different from you. Whether it be color, creed, religion, whatever belief they hold, you must love and respect that person.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to attempt that question? All right, I think it was well explained by Ronald there. And then the other question is this. Ronald, you would have mentioned a bit on it. But do you think we should be colorblind? Do you think we should be colorblind?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a denial of the issue. Let's say, for example, you are a woman of African descent, so your color is black. I'm someone of South Asian descent, so my color is brown. When I look at you, should I blind myself of your color? Should I look at you and think, what color? White, blue? You understand? I think the moment we tell ourselves, well, we should be colorblind, so that will help us with not being racist against each other. I think that's a denial of the problem. You see, the problem is not that we are supposed to be the same. The problem is that we are different and we refuse to accept that we are different. That's the problem. We think to ourselves that my difference is a superiority than your difference, and your difference as being inferior. The problem is, I think that my color, right, is of a much higher dignity or standard than yours. So I compare my color with yours and I say, okay, mine is lighter, yours is darker, so mine is better and yours is not. But if we tell ourselves that, listen, we are all human beings, we are all equal, we have our differences, we behave differently, we have our different cultures, language, religion, etc. And we accept the fact that we contribute to society in a unique way, we can begin to appreciate each other and to tell ourselves that we need to conform to be united. I think that that's another misconception, or we fool ourselves to say that. We do not have to be of the same category, I would say, to be united. You and I can be different. We can have different opinions, but we can still coexist together in love and respect.
All right. Thank you very much. And anybody else would like to make a comment on that question?
For me, someone saying we should be colorblind, it's like someone who say maybe if we just stop talking about racism, it will go away. It's just, for me, just the talk of the fool, because the more silent you get about it, the more you ignore that there is just different people and that we should just accept it. To come back again to the very core of the issue of racism, doing that, it's helping the oppressor. Like the silence for me is the weapon of the oppressor. Because you being silent, you being colorblind, if so exists, it won't make the issue go away. The oppressor will still oppress and the victim will still be victimized. So it's, for me, if you have I like to be, frank and I got an issue for that, but it's having a very low QU to imagine that being silent or being colorblind will ever be a solution. It's just not possible.
All right, thank you. And there's another question. We have two more questions before we wrap up. The other question is, someone would have sent a mention in terms of John 3:16 and Acts 17:22 to 26, right? When they look at the verses there, the question is, in light of racism, are we genuine or are we being masked and going through the motion with each other? I'm going to read that question once again. In light of racism, are we genuine or are we being masked and going through the motion with each other?
Chibiki, stemming from the last two questions and also this one, I wanted to bring out a few things. Just now we were speaking about the image of God and how that influences our views on racism. And Ronald spoke about how we must view everybody as being created in the image of God, and that is correct, that is right. But I also think we must view ourselves. It must start with us recognizing that as an individual, I am created in the image of God. And when you recognize that, you will be able to see that, listen, if I am created in the image of God, being hateful to another human being is not something that rightly represents who God is. Um, you asked a question about at what point in the biblical narrative did racism start? And I believe it started when one set of people, right, who were created in the image of God, who God loved, decided that, hey, I'm better than this other group of people. The same people that God loved, the same people that God said, listen, I am going to let you be their light, that you will reconcile them to me. They did not see that, but they chose to think, oh, it's all about us. We are the favorite people of God and we can treat them anyhow. And when Jesus came, and he reinforced his kingdom. He set up his kingdom. He called on people, and he is calling on us now too to treat everybody equally.
Yeah.
Not only did Jesus treat people who were not Jewish equally and mingled with them, cared about them, recognized their issues, but he treated women in a high favor too. So
Mhm.
um, we as Christians should recognize that, hey, God has loved us, and it's because we are made in the image of God that we should treat other people, our own brothers and sisters, like how God treated them and would continue to treat them.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Anybody else? Any other submission on this? All right. So we will take the final comment, final question for this evening. I know it's very late by Stephanie. Emmanuel, can you please mute your microphone? Thank you. Yeah. So I know it's very, very late by Stephanie right now. Is it about 8, 9 o'clock right now?
It's 10 p.m.
Oh, it's 10 p.m. Good. So I can't get you guys more. I know Laura also there in France. Just for viewers' sake, I'm sorry, viewers. Today I cannot really get to see all your comments and see your questions perhaps that you would have placed there. I don't know what went wrong today, but nevertheless, I'm so happy that you were here and you would have commented. So our final question on the discussion, of course, um, can you name a way in which persons we can help in order to eradicate racism without violence?
What is a way that we can help to eradicate?
One way. So what I'm going to do, because this is our final question, each person you're going to say it one way. What you think personally we can how we can eradicate racism briefly, and we are going to wrap up with that particular question without violence, by the way.
I think the way that we can eradicate racism is the same way in which it's being taught. We should teach people to not be racist, just like how in families and in social settings, racism is discussed negatively, and is being perpetuated and encouraged. We should have more time in our families, in our schools and churches, every different social settings like we're having here on Facebook. We can have these conversations on national television, but the major way I feel that racism can be killed is if we have more positive conversations. We create environments where we can discuss these things.
Thank you very much.
For me, a way we can begin is first we need to acknowledge and accept that we not only have a part to play in eradicating racism, but actually acknowledge that we have been a part of the problem before, whether we are a church organization or political party or a social group, or even as an individual. Acknowledge that you have played a part in the problem, and then begin to say, okay, let's work towards a solution.
Thank you. Next person. Everybody's waiting for everybody to go next because everybody want to be loud. Everybody's microphone on.
I'll let you go, Andrea. Please.
Okay, I'll be short as usual. What I'm saying to eradicate, yes, I am in agreement with Arusha. She said that that we should educate people more about telling them, showing them where it's wrong and so right. Racism is wrong, right? So also if the leaders, I'm thinking about the leaders, right? The leaders generally, if you have a leading position, you have to set the right example, right? For instance, like Guyana now, with all the politics and so on. And, I believe that if we have a leader, right, that is for all, everybody, then treating everybody equally, right? Then it can help in some way. It can help in some way to help the people so that they can live in unity. So I believe the leaders play a vital part in it also.
Thank you so much.
In a short, in a more theological way and ideology, I like what Paul says in Galatians 3, verse 26 to 28. He's saying, "For you are all sons of God through faith in Christ Jesus. For all of you who were baptized into Christ have clothed yourself with Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor freeman. There is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. And if you belong to Christ, then you are Abraham's descendant," and so forth. I really like what he's saying. And people might see it as, being colorblind, but he is not. If not, he will not have said neither slave or free man, because you are either free or slave. He's basically telling us that we all belong to God. And if we dare to really take the time to understand what it means in a Christian way, if you so-call yourself Christian, there is no way you can see your brother who might look different than you being other than your brother. I really like what he's saying, and it's very much not, blinding himself by saying, okay, I'm not saying that you're black or I'm not saying you're white, because basically he's saying all of them exist, but focus more on the fact that we all belong to Christ and we call to love. Christ is love, so we can only be a loving person. If we're not, it's inconsistent with calling ourselves Christian.
So for me, I definitely agree with what Moise is saying. On a practical side, for at least in the U.S., there are many things that we can do to actively help to end racism. I believe that definitely the peaceful protesting that has been going on is actually making some very real changes. So I believe that that's important. Also, sharing of the information, getting the information out there, making the recording when it's seen and sharing it, publishing it, getting the information out, teaching people, informing people. Also been saying there's a lot. It's a nice thing. A lot of bookstores are selling out of books that are written about these issues, about racism, about what is
Educate
going
people.
on. Yeah, to educate people and having that in the curriculum for kids. I mean, so many, I've seen a lot of my friends that have children are trying to go out of their way to find these books to educate their kids, to really understand this issue and really have a better idea, to really educate ourselves. So yeah, education is a huge thing. I mean, education, protesting, and also at least in the U.S., I mean, voting is really big. As Andrea was saying, the leadership is huge because they make decisions, and voting out. It's, I mean, because it's not just, you know, the police. It's also I mean, it's so much. It's around it's systematic, because the judicial system that's protecting the police. You know, we need to being able to vote, and I'm sure, I mean, it's around the world, but at least in the U.S., you know, voting out the ones who have already shown that they're very blatantly racist, voting out those and voting in ones that will make a change, and people, and you know, I mean, it's so many different parts that we can do to actively make a change.
Thank you, Mondelice. Yeah, Dexter.
Yeah, so for a nonviolent resolution to this, it comes down back to policies and laws for me, because we need now to create policies and laws to deal with this. We're in a time where it's being videoed, it's being reported, persons are posting about it, but what are you going to do with this information? So some politicians do a top-down approach, some do a bottom-up. I think we need to start with them understanding, like, listen, even your legislative makeup needs to change. We should have a policy where only a certain amount of this race is in parliament. Let's have as wide various persons as possible in parliament, so that we have 6 Black people, 6 Indian persons, 6 Amerindian, 6 Chinese, things like that. You move down to policy in itself, where the Ethnic Relations Commission or bodies like that could do more, because there are greater penalties when you're being racist. Because we could educate persons as much as we want to, but there still needs to be oversight, and there needs to be consequences for this. It needs to be, when you create laws to deal with this, even the police are afraid to be caught in this web. Even politicians are afraid to be caught in this web. You don't want to be caught in something like that. So when you have policies and laws to govern this and to make that change, it's easier for the country to shift the dynamic towards in that direction. So even if you're internally racist, you really can't show it. It's too big a risk to even show it, much as to tell it to somebody else, much as to express it. We're forcing you. You're basically being forced to change your mind. All right? So for me, it comes a lot to policies and laws. And rallying politicians to do something like this, it's going to be very hard. Because even in our parliament, you have some different races, but just for as a token, basically. So that's what I'm saying. Some person would go from the top down or from the bottom up. But for me, it's a lot comes down to policies and laws.
All right. So thank you very much too. So that wraps up our session for this afternoon. Dexter Smartt, I'm convinced that you'll be an excellent lawyer when you get out there and when you accepted to the bar. Hurry and complete your exam and come out of law school. And one day, I told him before, because we had an interview before, and I told him maybe one day I'll need him to represent me for something. So I'm so happy about that. So keep that in mind. Keep today's topic in mind. Who knows? You might be the lawyer to make that proposal in terms of change of policies and guidelines governing even the ERC currently that is in Guyana. And who knows what will happen, what a revolution we can create across the Caribbean and moreover across the world. So I want to say thanks to you for being here. Just for audience information, thank you for listening to Issues in Focus with Shibiki Vivers this afternoon. So we had on our panel today, we had Dexter Smartt, prospective law student, graduate from UWooden Law School, currently resides in Trinidad. We had Arusha and Ronald Emmanuel. They're from Guyana. They are prospective theology graduates also. I'm so happy that you can be here this afternoon with us. Andrea Charles, Guyanese, by birth, well, just moved to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. She would have taken her time out to be here today again. Laura is off air. I think maybe she had some internet issue, but thanks to Laura. She is originally from Colombia, but currently resides in France. And the Mondelice, I met Stephanie and Moise here at USC, and I'm so happy. When I was searching for someone, I needed a white person to be on my program, and I'm saying white because Stephanie's comfortable with me calling her that. So I issue that I asked for, so I know that she's comfortable with that. So because of that, I was just scrolling through, and my head was just going. I'm like, who can I get? And then it's like suddenly I remember Stephanie, knowing how Stephanie is always vocal on issues. So I'm so happy that, Stephanie, you can be here with us today. And of course, your loving husband, Moise. Moise, thank you for sitting in with her today. So I want the public to know this is a wonderful, a beautiful interracial marriage here this afternoon. And I want us to continue. Let us do a paradigm shift as it relates to racism. Each one share this video to on your page. I don't know who it may touch, who may be able to maybe change their mentality, but I especially want our younger generation to be different. I always tell my students, listen, I don't care what race you marry. I will, whenever I reach the points in stories where there's something about racism is a central theme in the poem or in the story, I now try to do my version of indoctrination on the children. So my classes are East Indians and they're Africans. So I would usually tell them, I don't care if you have to marry the East Indian guy or marry the East Indian girl, nothing is wrong with that. If you have to marry the African boy or girl, nothing is wrong with that. So I want all of us to do our part just to show the world that, here, what? God made each one of us one race. And by God's grace, I hope that each one of us can show the love and the unity that we should show to one another. So stay long, stay tuned. See you again on Monday at 2 p.m. as we look at the topic, passion into productivity. And if you want to know how to make some money and you want to know how persons are surviving with their wonderful business and everything, you have to tune in on Monday to have some business tips so that you can, maybe after this corona lockdown, you can start your own business and start getting some more money, even if you maybe lay off. So God bless you all and have a fantastic weekend. Let's just pray as we close. Loving God and Father, we are thankful for the discussion that we had. I pray, Lord, that this video, this interaction, it was able to touch some lives, touch some heart. And may you help at the end of the day, we can have a wonderful relationship as human beings. Thank you, Lord. And may you help us all to have a wonderful, fantastic weekend. Through Jesus Christ. Amen. See you again on Monday.